Hello and welcome to the Slumbering Sloth Book Nook, a podcast about all things books, publishing and more. My name is Emma and today my guest is Abiola Bello. Abiola is an author, founder of the Little Author School, co-founder of the Author School, Inc. Publishing Services and Hashtag Press. Now on with the show. Thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for inviting me.
You are very welcome. It's lovely to have you on. So let's get started. So first things first, can you tell us about your current role?
Yes, so I have many jobs, all in publishing, which is quite funny. So I'm an author. I write mainly middle grade and YA books. But I also co-direct two publishing houses. So one's called Hashtag Press, and then we started up a new imprint, which is just for underrepresented voices called Hashtag Black, and that launched, I want to say last month. I'm going to just say last month. So that's just started up. And I also co-founded the Author School, which is basically like events for writers, and we get speakers in from the industry to come speak to authors and just give them tips and advice. And it's always like a really fun, amazing day. And I also run a kids competition called the Little Big Book Comp, which is under Little Author School, and that's just a bit more fun, and that's just giving like young writers opportunity to get published. And part of the Author School as well, we have something called Inc., which is self-publishing services, because we're definitely for self-publishing, and we just think if people had more options in terms of getting better quality at times, they might have better success with their books. So we were like, we've got all the contacts to kind of do that one, and we just have that will set up, so if someone wanted to use our services, they could just use it and get their book done.
Yeah, of course. As I said, so obviously you've got lots going on and lots of different roles. How do you balance everything?
That is the question. I'm not the most organized person, which doesn't really help. I have a diary and I write lists constantly, and yeah, I'm not great at it. There's always something that kind of like I'm kind of slacking in, if I'm honest. If Hashtag Press has a lot of books going on at the moment, then I find sometimes like the Author School, I'm not focusing as much on that. And then because Hashtag Black is very new, it's just kind of getting the word out there. But because of what it represents, it's kind of building its own thing quite easily. But we still got to just try and find like the manuscripts we want. So I do have lots of lists, and I kind of write out like, day by day, focus on this, focus on that. But things happen, like, maybe an edit comes back for a book that requires us to read it ASAP because we need to go to print like within 2 weeks. So then everything else kind of needs to wait as we focus on that one. Or let's say with the Author School, we book in speakers, and like for this one in November, we haven't got all our speakers yet. And I think that's just because we just keep forgetting, if I'm honest. So as we start promoting the Author School, we're then like, oh my gosh, I've got a speaker for this, and we've got to focus on that bit. So yeah, it is really difficult to balance, but it's possible. It's possible to do. And I'm like a night owl. I go to bed at very weird times. So that's usually when I'll start writing and stuff. Or just read a book. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I've spoken to quite a few writers and they have very like odd sleep patterns. So some people write really late at night and then some people get up at like 4 a.m. and start writing. Or they'll
Yeah,
just like do it for an hour, or they'll just do like say a 5 hour stint of writing. I think it just depends
yeah,
on where your creativity like comes in. Like I've got a really good idea and I need to get it on paper like right now. Do you think that's quite easy
exactly.
for
Yeah.
you to just start writing, just like, right, okay, I've got this, I'm just going to start getting it on paper?
Yes and no. Like I've started off a new book. Um, like I think I started it last week actually, and I'd finished my third Emily book. So because that's now gone to the editor, I can now focus on this new book a bit more. But it's just, I mean, I don't write every day. I tell everyone to do that, but I don't do it, to be honest. But when I do write, I kind of like go crazy. So I can write like, I'll write like 2 chapters maybe. And then I might go like a few days not writing anything, but I'll still be thinking about the book. So I'll have like notes written down on like my phone of just like developing the character and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's just, creatives, we just like have really weird patterns. And I think it's just when it's kind of quiet and no one's awake, it's when we kind of suddenly have all this energy. which
Yeah.
is I've noticed.
I can
Yeah.
sympathise because I've definitely written essays at like odd times of day. Like I'll just be at the library at like 7 in the morning and I'll just be like, right, I'm gonna go and write this today. And I'm just like, why am I
Yeah.
here? I've done like
No,
500
it's so great.
words by midday. I'm just like, yes, I've done something. I've actually done something. So that's great. Um, so kind of like moving on, how did you kind of begin, say, talking about your writing angle? Like, how did you begin writing? Like, did you just get into it straight away, or was it something that you just sort of discovered later on?
Well, I would read. I mean, I still read a lot, but when I was a kid, I'd read like all the time, and I just used to write my own stories just for fun. And there was like this book series I was obsessed with called The Babysitter's Club
Mm.
by Anna Martin, and I used to just rewrite them and put my friends in the situation. This was like in primary school, and then my friends would read it, and it just kind of became a thing. Never thought much of it, to be honest. And then when I got to secondary school, my English teacher said to me, you know, you should think about being an author. And I was like, is that like a real job? And she was like, yeah, yeah, like, you know, you can get like money for writing books and whatnot. You should think about it. So from then, I kind of was like, oh, if I can get like paid money to do all this fun stuff that I like, why don't I just do that? You know, I was the most naive person you'd ever meet. So for me, I just thought it'd be like, oh my God, it's gonna be so easy to get this done. And yeah, I just kind of kept writing, and I had this whole character about this girl with powers called Emily Knight. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of books with a lead female character. And I came with this when I was about 12. So I was like, I want to kind of write about this character. And it was pretty much based on the things I used to watch a lot. And yeah, so from then I kind of just kept writing. And then I went to uni. I met a lot of creatives there, a lot of writers there who then helped me. And I kind of figured it out from there. But yeah, it hasn't been like the easiest road in the world, but it's definitely kind of paid off. So it's all good.
That's great. So, obviously, because you do sort of the publishing side and you do the writing side, do you think it makes it easier, kind of because they kind of blend into each other sometimes? So you kind of have knowledge from both sides of the industry?
I mean, well, now I do because I was 23 when my book came out, and
Okay.
then I only started the publishing house when I was 28. So I had to kind of learn a lot about the publishing by myself because I came from like a dance background. So I didn't know anything or anyone in publishing. Now being a publisher, I now definitely have a better understanding of how it all works and just the pickiness of things. Like I used to have a big problem with um, publishers who wouldn't let anyone who didn't have an agent submit. This was before I had an agent. So I used to find out really like, oh, they're already blocking me because I can't get an agent, blah, blah, blah. But now being a publisher, I'm like, yeah, it's quite good actually when you have only agents submitting because it just kind of ups the standard a little bit.
Mm.
You know, most of the things you're going to get sent are going to be pretty much what you want, where when it's kind of more open you get like a range of things, and obviously there's amazing books because I found amazing books, but you'll also get stories that are like really not what you represent or just not very well written. So an agent definitely puts that kind of filter pretty much there. So now I kind of understand that a bit more, and just kind of like seeing a bit more of just the issues in publishing. And I mean there's things I still don't get, like obviously the whole diversity issue I still don't get, why publishers can't get that together. I mean, that's something I just will never understand. But I definitely have a lot more respect for like selling books and selling foreign rights, and even just like pushing for a book to get out there and maybe not getting the response you want, and just like doing your very best, and maybe the book still isn't taking off and stuff. So before I used to kind of put all the blame on publishers, like, well, this didn't work because the publisher do this. But now I'm like, no, it's not really that. There's like so many factors that go into it as well. So yeah, it's definitely been a big lesson learned, I'll say.
Yeah, because I guess you got to learn all parts of this big business as well, haven't you?
Exactly. Yeah. Because we're so tiny,
Yeah.
we had to learn everything. And because in our first, I want to say our first year, we didn't have a sales team because I don't know, I think maybe they just thought they weren't sure we were going to be serious about it. So maybe they thought we were really small and we're not sure if they're going to stick around or whatever. So we kind of just cracked on and did it ourselves. I used to work in retail. Like, how hard is it to like sell a book? So we kind of had to figure out that side and talking to bookshops and figuring out stuff. And luckily, I knew a lot of people in sales that worked in books who gave us really good tips and stuff. So the first year, we kind of just done it ourselves, and it kind of worked out for us because some of our books became bestsellers. But then when we went to London Book Fair the following year, we had sales teams that said they've been watching us and they wanted to therefore take over, and that did definitely take a weight off us because it's only two of us that run it, and that was very much like quite nice to be like, okay, someone else is going to deal with that side and we can kind of focus on other parts of the business.
Yeah, as I say, because it is just such a big task of
Yeah,
starting your own sort
it's
of
so
business. Yeah,
tough. Yeah.
yeah. So especially the two of you, like, right, how do we start for starters? And it's just
Exactly. It's a lot, and it's a lot of people you're having to talk to, and a lot of back and forth, and going back and forth with the author. It's a lot. Like when the book gets signed off, we're literally both like, yes, like it's just the best feeling when it's signed off, because at least in a few weeks you're going to get it. It's going to look great, and it's kind of like at least that bit's done. It's just kind of like, I think for me it's more like the deadlines and stuff, like knowing that this edit has to get done by this point, and this author needs to confirm this is okay by this point, and it's just kind of doing that. And obviously things happen sometimes and you can't always do that, so when you have that rush of trying to get it done, that's where I get it. I don't like that at all.
it's all learning as well, I guess, from that.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
stressful sometimes, but it's fun, but at times it's super stressful,
Yeah,
for
so
sure.
it's like anything. It's just something it's unexpected. It's thrown at you. You're just like, great. Let's just try and sort this out
Exactly.
first. And how would you deal with that? Because no two situations obviously are the same. So I guess it's a learning curve every time that something happens.
Exactly. And when you think like, when you feel like, oh, okay, we learned our lesson from this book, you maybe won't make the same error or whatever it is for the next following books. And then another book will come along and you'll be like, hold on, we've been here before. So that's quite annoying when that happens. I think the hardest bit is when you have a really big book to get through.
Mm.
That's the hardest one because you have to read it so many times and try and like catch all the mistakes and tying it up. And because it's such a big book, it obviously takes longer to read. And when you're like a ticking deadline, so that's what I don't enjoy so much.
Oh, bless. So, kind of moving on. So obviously your role working for a publisher obviously was sort of talking about balancing and trying to like organize yourself and trying to just pick up different things and sort of dealing with problem solving. What would you say like the key sort of skills are that you've either learnt in your role or like you think are sort of most appropriate to your role?
Um, I guess the thing I've learned the most, which probably sounds a bit funny, is probably patience.
Mm.
Working with authors, because being an author myself, I have a certain mindset, and then having to work with authors who don't have the same amount of knowledge about the industry you have is very interesting. Is the best way to say it. And I think it's just kind of monitoring expectation, which is what a lot of publishers, especially small ones, we've spoken about a lot. It's like you'll sign an author and they've got a great book, and they think they've got a great book too, and then they think they're going to get all this stuff because it's a great book, and you're like, we're going to try, but we don't know kind of thing. So I think it's more like managing expectations. That is something that I've learned a lot, and just patience in kind of dealing with so many people in different parts of the process, and trying to get your vision of the book across to them, but still tying in the author's vision as well, and everyone being happy. um yeah, those are probably the things I've learned the most.
Yeah, would you say that communication obviously is a massive part of what you do as well, like when liaising sort of with so many different people?
100%. And a lot of stuff is like over email.
Yeah.
So, you know, because like we get so many emails a day, and even there's only two of us, the amount of emails I miss is a joke at some point. And yeah, just like sometimes, especially when it comes to things like cover art, I'm very visual, so I'll have quite a very clear image of what I want, and kind of like relaying that sometimes to the cover designer can be quite challenging when they don't understand. I mean, we have a really good illustrator And she just gets like everything I say, and it can be worded in the most weirdest way, and she'll be like, I know exactly what you want, and she'll do it. She just seems to get me. And then others, you have to be more like um, almost guiding them through it,
Mm.
kind of thing. And it's just kind of learning how people communicate and what's easier. Some people, like, you know, they just want to talk on the phone all the time. I'm not a phone person. I don't really like talking on the phone. So it's just kind of getting that. Some people want to meet up and have face-to-face talks and stuff, and obviously it's quite hard because there is only two of us, and like Helen, who's my business partner, she doesn't even live in London. So it's just kind of like figuring out the best ways that people can understand what you're saying. And also I feel like when something's going wrong, it's very easy to kind of write an email that sounds not great and someone to read it not great. Like Helen is the queen of writing like the best emails. If like we're trying to check someone, she's like the best person at writing it because she writes it very firm but still nice. Whereas I'm not so good at that, and I feel like mine just comes across really like this is what it is, and just very like to the point. So I'm still learning with that side of things. But yeah, communication is definitely key.
That's great. I say because you always see an email, and obviously we say like text. You can never kind of like what tell what people are saying in an
Exactly.
email.
And it depends on your like on your mood as well. Because, you know, they could mean it in the nicest way, but because you're pissed off, you're gonna read it and think they're giving you an attitude. Like we had an author and she kept feeling that I was annoyed of her, and I wasn't at all. And she was like, your emails seem like you're really annoyed of me. And I was like, does it? To me, this was very clear. So I was like to Helen, I was like, does it read to you like I'm annoyed? And she was like, no, it just reads like that's just the facts. And I was like, maybe I should have put a smiley face, something like so she knew I wasn't being
Just plastered on some
aggressive.
emojis on it,
You know what I mean? Or like a
like
kiss or something. I don't know, because I wasn't, it was just literally pointing out the facts. And I
yeah.
think because she was feeling quite sensitive, she thought I was upset with her. And I was like, no, you would really know if I was upset with you. Like I wouldn't hide that
Oh,
quite well.
oh, it's so sad. It's always sometimes reading is it's just like oh no, I've done something wrong, but they're like
Yeah,
no, I didn't mean it that way.
exactly.
Yeah,
So there's that happens a lot with the authors because they're a bit more sensitive at times. Well,
yeah.
some of them are sensitive.
So kind of like moving on. What advice would you give to someone that's trying to break into the publishing industry?
Um, Do you know, I get asked this a lot, especially by people wanting to get into the industry. And I think, I don't know, like because my journey getting into industry was, I mean, I never had a job in publishing ever. So I never did an internship. I pretty much made my own business and kind of that was it really. So I kind of like made my own way into the industry. But what I would say to someone if they're wanting to like work for, you know, a big publishing house or whatever, I would just say really figure out what it is you want to achieve, because I think a lot of people who want to get into publishing will instantly say I want to be an editor or I want to go into marketing, and they don't really understand what that means.
Mm,
And to be honest, when I was trying to do internships, I didn't really, I mean, I remember once, I think it was like Random House before they were part of Penguin, they were saying they said about, do you want to do work experience in rights? And I had no idea what rights meant. And I was kind of like, yeah, I'll do whatever. But I was thinking, what the heck does rights mean? So I think a lot of them, they'll be like, oh, editor, that means I just get to read the books first. And it's like, yeah, but there's also, like, you're literally the first person to really mold this book into what it's going to be. Can you do that? That's actually a really big job to do. There's a lot of pressure. And a lot of them don't realize that. Or when it comes to marketing, they think, oh, you know, I get to throw a launch party and whatever. And it's like, no, there's a lot more to it, like a lot. So I think it's understanding each part of the process a bit more. And someone actually gave really good advice. And she said, sometimes it's good to go into a role in publishing that no one really is interested in, so you can get in the door. Then once you're in the door, you learn what you need to learn, and then you can kind of move up
mm,
and move to a different department. And I think that comes down again to people kind of being a bit more open into different parts of publishing. And I don't feel like until you do it, you know which parts of publishing you would enjoy the most until you literally get into it. I used to think I'd really like just doing like more of like the publicity side of things, but I actually really like editing and like the cover design stuff. So, and I didn't know that until I started a publishing house. So I think people need to be a bit more open into like what part of publishing want to get into. And sometimes going for like a small start-up publishing house just to kind of get in there, get your experience is also a good idea.
Yeah, of course, because you've got more opportunity to sort of do a bit of everything as well, as opposed to just sort of
Exactly.
being set to
And
one
you have more of
department.
a voice as well. You have more of a voice of a smaller house. They want to hear your thoughts and see where they can do better. Whereas in a big publishing house, I mean, I think it just depends on who you are. I think you can go in new, and if like you say good things and you're good at your job, I don't see why you wouldn't be listened to.
Mm.
But also they do have their people in place who are their go-to people. So I feel like you need to kind of go in there really kind of standing out a little bit for them to kind of be like, okay, let's listen to what she has to say if you're new. But then obviously when you're in a big one, there's a lot more going on. There's multiple books happening at the same time, being published on the same day. There's a bigger team. There's more money as well. So there's definitely highs and lows, but I would just be super open to kind of work with anyone at any role and just kind of learn and then kind of go from there.
That's great. That's a great bit of advice because I always have good advice on this podcast, which is always to add to that. So that's great. Thank you. So, kind of lastly, what is a book that you've read recently that you'd like to recommend?
Okay, I don't know if this is really naughty of me to recommend one of hashtag's books, but I'm going to anyway.
Go for
So
it.
it's a book actually just it's coming out at the end of September, but we just got some advanced copies today, and they look really really cool. There's a book called "Ticking Off Breast Cancer," and it's a memoir by a lady called Sarah who had breast cancer, and she's very like super organized. She writes a lot of to-do lists. So a lot of the book is about like checklists and like basically how to tick off breast cancer from your checklist kind of thing. It's such a good book. It's so informative, but it's also so funny as well, which you probably wouldn't expect from a book about breast cancer. And I feel like it's just one of those books that I feel like would help anyone.
Yeah.
So that's a book I'd recommend. A book I read recently, which I know is quite an old book now, but I only read it the other day, is All the Boys I've Loved Before.
Ah,
Um,
yes, yeah.
I basically my cousin watched the Netflix film and told me to watch it. This was like last year, and I watched the beginning and I thought it was rubbish, so I stopped watching it. And then I was at the library and I saw it and I was like, Joe, let me read the book and just see if it's any better. And I loved it. I thought it was so good. I got like the whole trilogy sent to my house. Like I absolutely loved it. So yeah, that's the book I'm really interested in. And then I rewatched the Netflix and then I got more into it because I knew what was going on. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's great. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
That's it for this week's episode. Thanks for listening. You can follow Abiola on Twitter at EmilyKnightIam. If you'd like to get involved with the podcast, you can get in touch through Twitter at novelm16 and use the hashtag slothcast, or you can send me an email at summerslothbooknook@gmail.com. You can always find our podcast on our YouTube channel, Summer Sloth Book Nook, or you can download it from Podbean and Apple Podcasts for an on-the-go experience. See you next week. Bye!